Hi, welcome. Uh, where do I start? This is a collective reading for the full moon in Sagittarius and the 2 weeks following this event. How are you? It's been tricky, to say the least. The Mars and Chiron and Mercury energy of the month of May sort of characterize this period with a lot of forced healing, bringing so much to the surface that um, it sort of felt like a bottomless pit. Um, there has been such a frustration for those of us on the path of self-awareness and spiritual discovery because of the fact that all the work is internal and it's very difficult to receive. It has been very difficult to receive any reward externally for all of this work. And perhaps within itself, that is a problematic perspective to expect reward when um, all of the answers are within, of course. Um, and so, if we're finding that balance within from all of this work, that should be enough. But with all the inner child work that we've been having to do, um, not finding ourselves responding to our circumstances as children, emotionally immature beings, that's been a challenge, a real challenge. And um, all of us obviously have independent circumstances in our lives. I have come to the brink of being forced to make changes in my life because of the inertia that I have um, manifested externally in my life. And it's scary. It's been scary. The world is a scary place right now, if we allow it to be. And so the purpose of this reading is for us to commune in a collective effort to overcome any form of self-doubt and fear that may be pervasive in our experiences, and exploring how we move forward through these energies in consideration of what our individual struggles and strife may be. Um, Obviously, my perspective is that if you are having a perfect life and everything is going swimmingly for you, you probably are not um, spending your time uh, watching tarot videos for the collective. So um, if you see an opportunity for growth through this kind of work, of course, everyone is welcome. But there is more of a focus right now on spiritual evolution out of places of out of the shadows, out of the underworld. Um, Venus is currently negotiating her way into the underworld, and so that within itself is making for a graduation point from all of the mercurial mind based um, chaos self-doubt again, reevaluation, um, that's now being funneled into the Venusian world. So what our heart desires, what is keeping us from that, what part of our thoughts have we resolved that can now give us access to more heart energy. And the fear quotient, the fear of letting go, um, can be heightened right now as we move further and further into Gemini. Jupiter makes its big move from Taurus into Gemini this week, as does Venus and the Sun, of course. We are now moving into Gemini season. And Gemini energy is, while always in its positive enactment about curiosity and diversity and discovery and childlike energy, of course, the shadow of that is that the inner child can be really kicking up the dust around us and needing us to nurture our sense of belonging and the way that we communicate. Of course, Mercury right now is in Taurus, so there is still a lot of Taurian energy anchoring us in a need to be grounded. And of course, Gemini is air energy, which is the complete opposite. So the friction there can inevitably cause some anxiety or a sense of not knowing what lies ahead, and therefore curiosity can be deflated in without that security, because of course that's what the inner child craves, is security. And all this work that we've been doing on ourselves emotionally has been to bolster ourselves up to being able to show up as emotionally mature adults, as spiritually evolved people, and therefore able to take the hand of our inner child and move forward with the fullness of conviction and faith. And that's a little bit of where the test lies, as particularly as Jupiter moves into Gemini. That's all intuitive. So I hope there was something of that made sense. This particular full moon, of course, is Sagittarian in nature. So there is a lot of hope that this, along with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction and some other lingering pleasant energy brought to us at this time, with a good deal of fire from Mars being in Aries as well. That we're coming into some nice synergistic energy that hopefully will buoy us as we approach the unknown. I should be being far more convincing in what I'm saying, but I am full of self-doubt right now myself and working very hard to use the principles of Taoism and um, all of my spiritual practices to see myself through making radical commitments to change in my life, which will involve leaving my now uh, 3-year home. And I have some options, but I'm not really sure how I feel about any of them right now. So there you have it. Um, it's very beneficial for me to be able to show up as I am right now, to being able to share all of this with you and have an energetic exchange with you. And I will endeavor to continue to do that as things evolve in my life, because even though you're not here with me, I do feel you, and I truly appreciate that. So thank you. Um, Okay, let's get into our cards. I will start with our Asha Zen card, just because it seems that it sets the tone um, with the best of intentions, with the Fool in the Osho Zen deck, which I will read for us so that we can set the tone for this reading from an intellectual perspective, from the words of Osho. Oh, God, as I am supposed to, so you don't look at me while I'm reading. Moment to moment, and with every step, the fool leaves the path behind. He carries nothing more than his purity, innocence, and trust, symbolized by the white rose in his hand. The pattern on his waistcoat contains the colors of all 4 elements of the tarot, indicating that he is in harmony with all that surrounds him. His intuition is functioning at its peak. At this moment, the fool has the support of the universe to make the jump into the unknown. Adventure awaits him in the river of life. This card indicates that if you trust your intuition right now, your feeling of the rightness of things, you cannot go wrong. Your actions may appear foolish to others or even to yourself if you try to analyze them with the rational mind. But the 0 place occupied by the fool is the numberless number where trust and innocence are the guides, not skepticism and past experience. And that is pretty much everything right now, right? It is that trust. It is being in alignment, aligning ourselves each day in order to be able to show up in our childlike Gemini innocence, to experience and receive in alignment with the universe, in co-creation with the universe. And when we are in fear and when we are tethered to all of our past experiences, because that's all that fear is, right? Um, we get in our own way and we have to get out of our way. A fool is one who goes on trusting. A fool is one who goes on trusting against all his experience. You deceive him and he trusts you. And you deceive him again and he trusts you. And you deceive him again and he trusts you. Then you will say that he is a fool, that he does not learn. His trust is tremendous. His trust is so pure that nobody can corrupt it. Be a fool in the Taoist sense, in the Zen sense. Don't try to create a wall of knowledge around you. Whatsoever experience comes to you, let it happen, and then go on dropping it. Go on cleaning your mind continuously. Go on dying to the past so you remain in the present, here, now, as if just born, just a babe. In the beginning, it's going to be very difficult. The world will start taking advantage of you. Let them. They are poor fellows. Even if you are cheated and deceived and robbed, let it happen, because that which is really yours cannot be robbed from you. That which is really yours, nobody can steal from you. And each time you don't allow situations to corrupt you, that opportunity will become an integration inside. Your soul will become more crystallized. And I think that's a perfect message for Gemini season. Um, and for the exciting energy that is ahead for us, because there are lots of very innovative aspects on the horizon that we're experiencing. And it's easy to fear being left behind. It's easy to fall into the fear of abandonment, alienation, rejection. Um, as a person who's deep in job hunting and being aware of the fact that having principles when you're looking for work in an economy like the one that we're in is just not it's not that straightforward, and I can do all of my manifestation work every single day. And it's also very easy to lose faith and then to blame yourself because you're like, well, nothing's happening because I keep losing faith. And the reality is there's also the other side of it, which is that from a rational Cartesian perspective, it's ridiculous to expect things to just fall into your lap. It takes constant, consistent showing up and doing that with a smile and with a pleasant and optimistic view on life is really the only way to go. And that's what I've been learning, is to show up for myself in the best way possible, because all the anxiety, all the limitations, all the restrictions, all those things that keep me from being the fool, whether that be Eight of Swords concerns, my age, my lack of experience, my wealth of experience that might work against me, all these different conditions, all these different needs to tailor resumes for different types of roles, and to be up against thousands of people going for the same roles, and not necessarily having a foot in the door anywhere, and so on and so forth. And it's just time and effort and persistence and keeping one's chin up and one's head high. These are the things that we have to do, right? And I mean, I'm not, obviously, not everyone watching this, or probably very few of you, are looking for jobs right now, but that is the way that we have to approach everything in our lives, right? From the moment we wake up in the morning, how do we approach our day? I've had those experiences lately where I'm very conscientious and of how I'm showing up, and I'll wake up and I'll have had dreams, and maybe I've been taken outside of myself enough that there's that initial freshness, and then I allow myself, the mind starts up, and then it's suddenly like, uh, I think I feel anxious. Oh, I feel that discomfort in my solar plexus. Oh, like, how am I going to change this? So then I have to do some deep breathing, and then I have to do my gratitude practice, and then I have to say my prayers and speak to my guardian angels and guides, and whatever you do in your life that gets you to that place. That's my version of that. And even that takes commitment. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, it would be just as easy for me to, like, lose myself in all kinds of self-destructive or evasive activities, but avoidance just delays the inevitable, right? So there's no point in that. no point in being punitive to ourselves either, but we have to show up for ourselves. And being in the Fool energy is the way for us right now to show up for ourselves. So I shall now move on to the unusual fact that we have 3 spirit animal oracle cards, and I would not normally approach reading from this perspective, but these 3 did come out together, and I think that they make sense in unison with each other. And I will give you the 3 cards, and then we'll read from each message. But we got White Raven Spirit, Trust in the Magic. Starfish Spirit, Open to Infinite Possibility. Sorry, it's not picking up very well. I'm using Zoom to record these, and I had to turn off the background blurring tool because it seemed to be cutting off half of my face, because apparently the contours of my face don't register any longer at nighttime. So anyway, there you have it. And finally, Owl Spirit. You see clearly now. So this is an evolution here, but let us, and if you're into the numbers, White Raven Spirit is 66, Starfish Spirit is 59, and Owl Spirit is 43. So White Raven Spirit's message for us. I don't know why my throat is dry. I think I had too much salt. Nothing in the universe is random, for the intricate web of co-creation weaves together all events and has done so since the beginning of time. Coincidences have meaning, and White Raven Spirit appears to remind you to pay attention to these synchronicities so that you might recognize patterns. Even the winds dance in a pattern, participating in the magic of Spirit's plan for all. Align with the highest good and intentions, and you will come to see that White Raven is guiding you, an ally to you, and a messenger from Spirit. Align with the light, and you will start to recognize that all is working together harmoniously in ways the eye can't always see and the mind can't always comprehend. The universe is conspiring on your behalf right now, drawing you to the light and bringing you the magic and miracles that are your birthright. Now is the time to trust in the magic of the world that is everything and everywhere in all things. Pay attention to how things come together as if by magic, and you will see the hand of Great Spirit arranging things in your favor. Are you being distracted by the illusion of a chaotic universe? Deep in your heart, you know the world is full of magic, and White Raven has appeared to remind you that the ways of the world can cause spiritual amnesia. Stay awake and alert, for Spirit wants you to enjoy the miracles all around you. And it is important to remind ourselves of what the miracles are that are all around us, because they are everywhere, but we take a lot of things for granted, right? So, important reminder there. Starfish Spirit, open to infinite possibility. The oracle message is stretched out on the beach. The starfish opens fully as to the rays of the sun, to the power of potential. As you look out toward the horizon, do you open up to infinite possibility? Spirit is the source of opportunities beyond your wildest imagination and ensures endless possibilities are available. At this time, Starfish Spirit urges you to stretch past the limits of your everyday perception and comfort zone, to dream of bigger things and imagine with even greater hope and faith, for miraculous potential is shining down on you. Feel it, bask in it, and open yourself to be filled with inspiration. This is a very fortunate sign that Starfish Spirit has come to remind you of your infinite potential. When cynicism says no, Starfish Spirit says yes 1,000 times over. Are you willing to entertain new possibilities? Are you limiting your goals in order to be realistic and cutting yourself off from the power of dreaming big? Let go of your rigid beliefs about what is possible for you, and let Starfish Spirit inspire you to open your heart and your eyes to what Spirit has available to you. Now is the time to stretch beyond the familiar and unfurl yourself, for you are meant for more than you are imagining for yourself. Spirit wants the best for you and will support you in achieving whatever intention you hold dear. A beautiful message, right? One that's probably very needed. Owl Spirit, you see clearly now. Owl Spirit arrives to remind you that the wisdom within you is informed by your keen sense and the wisdom with, sorry, your keen senses and the wisdom within the consciousness we all share. Even in the darkest night, the owl sees clearly and is guided by every sense it has, including the first sense of intuition. Right now, your sensitivities are turbocharged and you are receiving messages from all directions. Owl Spirit reminds you to be wise and pay attention to what's between the lines, what is invisible to the naked eye, what cannot be heard with the ears, and what others may not be able to perceive. With all your senses aroused, you have much knowledge available to you. Clarity will come as you sit with all that you are sensing, allowing your intuition to guide you into understanding the whole and not just the parts. Let your wisdom arise and be your guide as you trust the acuity of all your senses. Intuition is real and can provide the clarity you need to understand your situation right now. Your relationship, your finances, your job, whatever it is, you can see the truth clearly now. We also received 3 soul journey cards. Um, I'm very self-conscious right now. I'm sorry that I'm not more chipper. Um, it's it's not because I'm miserable. I just the energy feels really heavy to me, and it doesn't feel um it's not that it doesn't feel dynamic. It feels that there's a lot of dynamism, but it just feels trapped. And I am deep in that personally and through this reading because I meditated before to get myself into the state of this energy. And it's what I'm really picking up on. And it's hard to push through that with smiles and laughter and frivolity. And so don't blame me, blame spirit. Okay. Um, and I do want to take this moment to acknowledge how you might be feeling triggered by the endless um, positivity that has been on display if you follow other readers or other how would I put it? Prophesizers in many ways, because that's what they end up doing. And, it seems to me that anyone that builds their wisdom on prophecy, on their dynamic of the ability um, to deliver prophecy, that there is an endless cycle of disappointment um, delivered in that too. And I see that a lot in the people that I have um, invested my time in. Um, there's almost like a little bit of a sense of a hangover. Like I didn't get all the positivity for the last couple of months because my life wasn't reflecting that anyway, and it started to really be quite jarring for me. Like I felt very alien to what was being reflected back to me in other people's messages and the way that they were interpreting the astrology. And I think it's always important for us to harness ourselves in the deeper sense of evolutionary process that spirituality is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are therefore here to experience the fullness of humanness, which ain't all fucking hunky dory, right? It's full of pendulum swinging and extremes, and you know, life goes from love to hatred to pain to joy to death to rebirth to um just the entanglement can be so passionate and at the same time so um draining, and that's the beauty of our journey. I mean, I was listening to Michael Singer recently, who I always like to check in with because you know, having that Zen perspective on life really gives me, um, you know, he explains it in a way to really apply it more practically, and letting go is so much a part of that. And he was talking about how if we had no problems, if we just got everything that we wanted all the time, nothing that we would receive would ever be enough. It would never be good enough. It would never be enough. It would never satisfy us, and it wouldn't really be something that we wanted. It's our to be a human being is a contrarian experience within itself, and it's so important to remember that, and it's so important to see. I know what it's like. I'm like that. I'm like, oh, look, Venus conjoining Mars. This is going to be amazing. It's a beautiful aspect, and it is a beautiful aspect if you are open to it in the context of the universe and the experience, the microcosm that you live in, of, as above, so below. It's about application. It's about understanding that energy and then being open to it and applying it rather than, um, in the same way as something that might be a little bit more uncomfortable. Let's say Mercury square Uranus or something like that. You might be reading a description of that and be like I don't want to feel that. I don't want to experience that. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean, even if it's if we're talking about longer transits in our astral chart, you might have a transit that lasts a year or whatever, and it might not be the most pleasant in its description. It may be a Saturnian or a Plutonian aspect in square to something. And I've had plenty of those in the last couple of years. Trust me, I understand how daunting that can be. But at the same time, even though I feel daunted by what I'm facing now, I also know that I felt daunted about everything that I was facing 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 2 years ago, and I'm aware of how much I've learned from a soul perspective and integrated into my human experience so that I can show up as a more compassionate individual, so that, I don't have to crawl into my hovel and curl up into a ball of shame and guilt and fear every time I feel rejected or unseen or unmet or unloved or whatever it may be. And it's complex, especially as we get older, because, there's so much history and there's so much stuff that can never be resolved because it's the deep past, and either the players aren't around anymore, or even if they are, they change, they evolve. Um, it's inherent to the process of compassion that we have to extend that courtesy to our fellow man, that they are capable of evolution, and sometimes the there's a soul incompatibility there that plays out throughout a lifetime too. All I'm trying to say, because I know that I've gone on in this tangent, is that a lot of the fool's journey starts with the innocence, yes, but when we're rebirthed into the Fool energy, we don't drop everything that we've ever experienced. We just are implored to show up with a Fool mentality despite the puzzle of emotions and trauma and experiences and memories that we carry. And that's the challenge. And there's something really refreshing about that, right? I mean, how wonderful to be invited to show up in childlike wonder with the Fool energy at the beginning of Gemini season as Jupiter moves into Gemini. I mean, these are really extraordinary, beautiful um, energies to be grateful for. Um, Sorry about that. I will get back to the cards. The Soul Journey lesson cards that we got, and I have no idea why I've pulled these cards, I just felt like it. And each one is a theme with a little descriptor. We got denial. They are just too glossy for this, so you can't see those. I'm really sorry. I acknowledge my fear, but I replace it with the insight of awareness. Happiness. I'm going to try regardless. There, you get at least can get some of it there. I am aware that being happy means that I am on the right path. I find that triggering, but fortunately, we got this card to clarify that. Freedom. I possess the power and the free will to create my own happiness. So if you put that in context of happiness, I am aware that being happy means that I am on the right path and I possess the power and the free will to create my own happiness. In other words, if you are creating, you have the capacity to be happy. Creating your life path, being the Fool, right? Not festering. And I know not everyone is, I mean, we can't all change our lives. I mean, trust me, I don't want to be changing my life circumstances. I'm like a big baby right now, and I'm like stomping my feet and being like, oh, I just want to be comfortable in my nothingness forever. But I'm not, I mean, yes, I'm comfortable, but I'm not happy in that discomfort. So somebody else might be tenured in a professional role for, years and feel really frustrated because they want to make, massive moves and they feel like they could because they have tons of savings or whatever else. But it's how we show up. If anything, I have learned from my transient nature, it's that uh, while there are certain environments and experiences that are too toxic to sustain and that we need to be, honor ourselves and our self-respect when we feel that we're not growing, and when something is causing us harm. On the other hand, I also realized that, you know, running away from things or moving away from things all the time, you do still have to face the fact that you go with you wherever you go. And so a lot of the problems and issues that you have um, are also there to give you the opportunity to understand what you can change in yourself. And my last professional role, which was one of the worst things that I've ever experienced in my life, and it was truly soul depleting in every single way, and just with very mean, vapid people. Um, so I don't regret leaving. I also know that I have to be accountable for the fact that in doing so, I squandered all of my savings, trying to figure out how to get over all of my trauma because I realized that I can't go into another role or another professional relationship having triggers that obviously I'm not going to take out on anybody in my professional environment, but I bring them home with me and then attack myself subconsciously or consciously, you know? So, anyway, all of that just to say that notions of freedom and happiness come from our heart, not our head, and not from anything out there. So, we're all just mirrors to one another. And the gifts are the lessons, not the paychecks, not the bonuses, not the cars, not the whatever. It's the lessons, good or bad, painful or easy. I don't even know how to read these cards that I pulled for our tarot because I pulled them in a succession of 9 cards from um, present through to future. Um, but I don't really know what they mean because I haven't really given them any thought. I know that, the fact that we had the moon as the first card is a clear indication that we are in that present full moon energy. And I I'm not really sure that I mean, I know that the aspects are very benefic around this full moon in Sagittarius, but at the same time, as I said, I also know that there's a lot of um the Gemini energy is definitely in its birthing stage, quite um uh, confusing um and erratic, to be perfectly honest. And so um I think we all need to ground ourselves and work on being receptive to this full moon energy because I think it is a very mysterious one. Um, I don't, there's nothing about it that I feel is particularly defined in a way that I could share with you right now, as very often with full moons, we can say, oh, well, this is like, this is what's happening with the moon, and this is the characteristic of this particular moon. This one feels very unknowable. And I feel like it's because it's very potent and it carries a lot of mystery that will be revealed in the weeks to come. So, on that note, I am understanding that a lot of court cards came out in this reading. And so I think that this is a map to the evolutionary process that we're going to go through as a result of this full moon energy. So we start out with the Queen of Wands. So we start out with a strong sense of uh, coming into self-confidence, coming into a knowingness of self. The wands are, of course, our spiritual, divine energy. Um, and so to be in a place of spiritual inspiration and connection in receptivity as a queen is fundamental to the experience of the full moon. And it makes sense too, because the fire energy of the wands and the Sagittarian element of the moon, definitely there is something about self-confidence, about forward movement, about belief in self-belief here. It's maybe been a crisis of self-belief that now is having the opportunity to fully uh, break free through that full energy. In other words, I'm saying to myself and to you, let it all go, fuck it, Who cares? Just receive and move forward with a smile. Because underneath it all, what's holding it all together is the King of Cups energy. So again, this is very internal. All of these cards are telling me that they're more about states of mind and how we show up. The King of Cups has such a strong self knowledge in terms of his emotional intelligence. He embraces his emotional maturity. He embraces the the fullness and the embodiment of a life fully lived, fully experienced, and fully understood. He can go into the subconscious. He can go into the practical applications of emotion um, with ease and confidence and self-assurance and no fear, complete absence of fear. There's such a strong element in all of these cards that demands of us to eradicate fear, to drop it, even if it's just for, the next month. Give yourself that, because there's so much potent uh, energy to harness and to integrate, but we won't be able to gain access to it if we're in fear. That's the bottom line. And a full moon in Sagittarius does tell us that. So I guess that is me characterizing this full moon after all. Um, what's in our way, though, is the Nine of Wands. So again, if we're looking at the wands as these are the Dali cards, so I don't even know how well they're showing up on camera, not particularly well. But you're not missing much because I mean they're beautiful to look at, but they're kind of weird. Um, the ones as arrows of spirituality. The Nine of Wands, the weariness and weariness. I always say both of those things because they are kind of aligned but different. Um, around our spiritual wounds, they get in the way. They are the cause of the fear. And I get a strong intuitive hit that the fear is of starting over, like, but we don't trust that we can start over without all of those ones, without all of that baggage, that it's like, oh no, I'm just like, this is just who I am. This is like, I can't function without all these things. I'm defined by them. Well, it's time to undefine ourselves. Um, and there's a slowness of opportunity in our surroundings because of that. We have the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. So this and the Knight of Cups in reverse. I mean, I don't know. It's very weird that both of those knights came out next to each other and reversed. They were very adamant when they came out. They came on the table and they went and flipped upside down. So, there's an indication of a lack of movement. And when I say movement, I don't necessarily mean accomplishment, but that would be the outer manifestation of that, or yeah, that's all I need to say. But we're cut off from something. We are like a it's like there's a frequency blockage there around our power to manifest into the material realm, and it comes from a blockage in our emotional field. And as a full moon is an opportunity to release, it really is what we have to focus on releasing, because it's not a big deal because these are knights, they're not kings or queens. No disrespect to the knights, um, but they are cards of movement. And when they're in the reverse, that kind of pushes all of that energy back inside of us. So it's a strong invitation to do that inner juggling, uh, sense it out within you, figure out what it is that is keeping you held back from receiving, both in your heart and in the world around you. And I think the bottom line is it really does come down to getting out of our own way, because after having the King of Cups, we then get the Queen of Cups. So the Queen of Cups is immersed in her emotions. She thrives on the abundance of uh, her heart and the generosity of her heart. And so it's an attitude of uh, generosity and emotional curiosity. Um, Even a sense of not playing, but being more mindful of how we relate. There's a need to relate more. There's a need to connect. So if there's been disconnection in your life, this is a strong invitation to recalibrate those those the frequency of our communication with the people that we love. And that kind of being in that space, actually, I get trust. It's trust. Be open to the people that you love and that you know love you. Trust, trust. And that will turn these two nights the right way up. And dropping those 9 wands in order to get ready for the fool mentality that we are meant to be in. Um, you know, we got initially, I had taken 9, no, wait, three, uh, I had only taken 8 cards. I don't know why, because I meant to take 9. And the card that had come out was the Tower. And I was like, I am not ending a reading on the Tower. That is, but it turns out that I didn't need to, because the 9th card that was required is the Sun, which, you know, could you get a better card to counter the energy of the Tower being terrifying? And to me right now, I find the Tower terrifying, but I also know that it isn't terrifying, because the reality is it's an inevitability. I think that we're all experiencing Tower moments. There is such a I wanted to say disillusionment, but I don't think that it's the weird disillusion. I think the world is sort of so overtly illusory at this point that it's an inevitability that there our value systems, our, what we trust, what we believe in, what we look at, what we are receptive to, the culture that we um, are open to, that we consume. We've all part of this great awakening that everybody's been talking about has been an awakening to the hideous state of the world, the corruption, the horrible leadership that we have. The corruption is um, corruption, both, I mean, from a justice perspective and just like the corrosive element of um, bad values being applied over and over again over the course of decades and centuries. Um, eventually catches up, and it did. And we are in the very uncomfortable shit soup of whatever happens next, because whatever happens next is as a result of that. So that can be as terrifying as it can be inspiring. But in order for it not to be terrifying, you kind of have to let go of um, the social values that we're tethered to. It's, in my case, and I'm sure that you can relate to this, it's a requirement to simplify. Um, I don't know what to do with this clarifier. We got the Knight of Cups, and I mean, I'm gonna do something that I don't really like doing, but mm, yeah, I'm just gonna go with it being about thriving. Um, Dropping the illusions of through the tower, dropping the attachments to things that don't really serve us and that we've outgrown, um, and embracing the sun energy, whatever that happens to be, because it's massive and undefinable, really, at this point. Um, uh, yeah, I'm gonna just not go any further. I do want to read something to you, so if you have the patience for it, um, see it through, because I think it is pertinent. So this was these are some musings that I put together from Marion Milner, who you may know, may not know, but if you don't, you'll hear some of her ideas now. And they are definitely, while they're a century old almost, they are wonderful. So I began to have an idea of my life, not as the slow shaping of achievement to fit my preconceived purposes, but as the gradual discovery and growth of a purpose which I did not know. I wrote, "It will mean walking in a fog for a bit, but it's the only way which is not a presumption, forcing the self into a theory. I did not know that I could only get the most out of my life by giving myself up to it. Here then was a deadlock. I wanted to get the most out of life, but the more I tried to grasp, the more I felt that I was ever outside, missing things. At that time, I could not understand at all that my real purpose might be to learn to have no purposes. I had at least begun to guess that my greatest need might be to let go and be free from the drive after achievement, if only I dared. I had also guessed that perhaps when I had let these go, then I might be free to become aware of some other purpose that was more fundamental, not self-imposed private ambitions, but something which grew out of the essence of one's own nature. People said, "Oh, be yourself at all costs." But I had found that it was not so easy to know just what one's self was. It was far easier to want what other people seemed to want, and then imagine that the choice was one's own. It struck me as odd that it had taken me so long to reach a feeling of sureness that there was something in me that would get on with the job of living without my continual tampering. I suppose I did not really reach it until I had discovered how to sink down beneath the level of chattering thoughts and simply feel what it meant to be alive. I came to the conclusion then that continual mindfulness could certainly not mean that my little conscious self should be entirely responsible for marshalling and arranging all of my thoughts, for it simply did not know enough. It must mean not a sergeant major like drilling of thoughts, but a continual readiness to look and readiness to accept whatever came. Whenever I did so manage to win its services, I began to suspect that that thought, which I had always been looking, no, sorry, I'm going to start that sentence again. Whenever I did so manage to win its services, I began to suspect that thought, which I had always been looked on as a cart horse to be driven, whipped, and plodding between shafts, might be really a Pegasus. So suddenly did it all alight beside me from places I had no knowledge of. I had just begun to ponder over the fact that all the things which I had found to be sources of happiness seemed to depend upon the capacity to relax all straining, to widen my attention beyond the circle of personal interest, and to look detachedly at my own experience. I had just realized that this relaxing and detachment must depend on a fundamental sense of security, and yet that I could apparently never feel safe enough to do it, because there was an urge in me that I had dimly perceived but had never yet been able to face. It was then that the idea occurred to me that until you have once at least faced everything you know, the whole universe, with utter giving in, and let all that is not you flow over and engulf you, there can be no lasting sense of security. Blind thinking could make me pretend I was being true to myself when really I was only being true to an infantile fear and confusion of situations. And the more confused it was, the more it would call to its aid a sense of conviction. Yet, for all its parade, there was as much in common between its certainties and the fundamental sense of my happiness as between the windy flappings of a newspaper in the gutter and the poise of a hovering kestrel. And only by experience of both, by digging down deep enough and watching sincerely enough, could I be sure of recognizing the difference. By keeping a diary of what made me happy, I had discovered that happiness came when I was most widely aware. So I had finally come to the conclusion that my task was to become more and more aware, more and more understanding, with an understanding that was not at all the same as intellectual comprehension. Without understanding, I was at the mercy of blind habit. With understanding, I could develop my own rules for living and find out which of the conflicting exhortations of a changing civilization was appropriate to my needs. And by finding that, in order to be more and more aware, I had to be more and more still, I had only come to see through my own eyes instead of at second hand, but I had also finally come to discover what was the way of escape from the imprisoning island of my own self-consciousness. I know that was deep and very wordy, but it aligns perfectly with our reading. So I hope you found yourself in that. And I'm going to leave it at that. I wish you an amazing full moon in Sagittarius and Gemini season start. And I will be back when the moon decides to demand another reading of the new moon in Gemini. So I'll speak to you then. In the meantime, many blessings to you And thank you so much for being with me. Much love.